Thank you all for joining. We're going to give it just a few more seconds to see if we have a few more guests hop on with us today. We are recording this session and it will be posted to the Round Rock ISD's Counseling Services website by the end of the day tomorrow. So if you missed anything, feel free to hop onto that site and review any information that is there. And you may always reach out to me. I am Dr. LaShonda Lewis. I am the Counseling Services Coordinator for Round Rock ISD. We will go ahead and get started. We have with us today Mr. Charles Williams. He is an educator from Dallas ISD at Solar Prep. It is an all-boys school where they're working on just developing the whole child there. So today we'll be looking at, he'll be presenting us information about contemporary gender considerations. In his words, he says, "We have been taught that things are either black or white, boy or girl, masculine or feminine. Now we know that there is gray between the black and white, and the gray term students and adults use to describe gender is ever-changing and evolving." So at this time, I am going to turn it over to Charles. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm so glad you are here. And so just a little bit about me. I am a counselor in Dallas ISD at an all-boys school. And this is my first year there. Before that, I was a middle school counselor at Highland Hills Middle School in Indiana. And then before that, where I got my experience with trans and gender nonconforming students, I interned at an elementary school in Louisville public school system. And that's whenever I got my first experience with transitioning with a trans student. And it was very eye-opening for me. And I am glad to be here to share just my experience and just more information on how we look at gender now. And I'm going to share my screen.
I'm sorry, Charles, before you get started, I forgot to mention that we will accept questions. If you hover over the screen, you will see at the bottom a question answer box. If you will click that, you will be able to submit questions to the panelists, and we will get to those at the end of our presentation tonight. If you have any other thoughts, feel free to put those in the chat and we will get those as well.
All right, yes, and we will be using the chat. So I like to keep things interactive and engaging and fun. So get comfortable, put on a smile, take your shoes off, and here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so just our agenda today. So we are going to take a pop quiz, and I know some of your faces were like, really, a pop quiz? Yes, it's gonna be a fun pop quiz. All right, and then we are going to go through some terminology. We're going to do a little case study recommendations, and at the end, we're gonna have some questions. And so as we go into this, I want you to think about just gender itself. We've been taught that it's in a box. Like even nowadays, we think about the big gender reveals, right? This is the box that we have. And so like there's one or the other. But today we're gonna look at it and learn that there's many things in between Team Blue and Team Pink. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our pop quiz. So we're gonna use our chat. And you can type the answers in or what you think the answers are. It's okay if you get them wrong. Like we're gonna learn, get our brains getting warmed up. All right, question number one. In 1905, what color is associated with boys and girls? So type your answer in the chat. I know I should sing do, 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 do. I did teach music before this. So hopefully we're getting some answers in the chat. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and say the answer. So men were red, women were blue. Okay, and it is associated with men are from Mars and women are from Venus, which I found very interesting that if you look at all the colors now, it's more men are blue and women are pink. But if you think about Mars, Mars is red, right? And Venus is blue. So looking at our picture, it's quite incorrect, even though this is what we now think of the colors, right? Men being blue, women are red or pink. So, which leads us up to question number 2. After what major event did manufacturers ordain pink for girls and blue for boys? Because this is what we know now. I know this one's tricky. You're like, ooh, ooh. All right. Well, and the answer is World War II. So this is fairly recent colors that we use. Um, and it was basically from the fashion industry. Fashion has done a lot with moving things in gender and across our spectrum. Question number 3. What historical event was led by trans and queer individuals in New York City? Usually people are like, oh, that's the easy one. I got that one. If you don't know, it's okay. So that was the Stonewall riots in 1969. And this was the leader of that, Marsha P. Johnson. She led the Stonewall riots. Question number 4. This is our last question. All right, so some of you who were a bit like pop quiz, okay, this is the last one. What year was the first successful gender reassignment surgery? Hmm. All right, so here's the answer. 1952. Her name was Christine Jorgensen. All right, so it's 1952. Now, if you look at this, the first successful liver and heart transplant were done in 1967. And I will show you a picture of Christine Jorgensen. And just a little bit about her. She was actually, she's an American, and she was in World War II. And she learned about reassignment surgery during the war. So just a little bit of history, but yeah, so 1952 was the first gender reassignment surgery. So we think about this, this transgender, like all of these gender questions and things being something that is now. Like, well, this just started in like 2015 and 2016. Like, trans individuals have been around for longer than that. And so this just gets your brain thinking like, wow, like, oh, didn't know that. So let's get into understanding, okay, how are we looking at gender in ourselves today? So today, I have my great model. This is the genderbread man. So genderbread man. He is going to help us understand gender in the 21st century, which how we look at it. So the first thing that we are going to look at is when you were born, okay, what the medical doctor said. So when you were born, this is considered your sex assigned at birth. This is given to you, like I said, you were born and it's like, you are what? You are male or you are female. Now, in between that, there is intersex. And intersex is when you have maybe a little piece of both, but one of your sex organs is more pronounced than the other. And so realize in the medical industry, this is 1 out of 1,500 or 1 out of 200 births, one child is intersex. Okay, so if you think about from the beginning, you get your sex assigned at birth. That's what the medical doctors tell you, male or female. And from there, you start to develop, right? You get older, you start to mature. So what happens next is your gender identity. And this is how do you see yourself? When you look into the mirror, what do you see or who do you see? And so no one else can tell you this. This is like you looking in the mirror, who do you see? Now, there are two terms that we use. One is cisgender. Now, when we say cisgender, that means your sex assigned at birth matches your gender identity. Okay, so I am a cisgender male because I was born male. My sex assigned at birth was male, and I identify as male. And so there are cisgender women or cisgender females who were they were born women and they see themselves as a woman. Okay, so those are cisgender. Now, transgender means your sex assigned at birth is different than your gender identity. And people ask, well, why are there two terms? There are two terms because without cisgender, you have normal versus transgender. And so normal versus transgender doesn't sound as, inviting. It's not one of those, well, normal, so cisgender is just the term used, and then transgender. Now, in between that, we get into the gray area because some of you are like, oh, okay, here's the gray area. Now, the gray area are for people who, they do not identify as cisgender male or cisgender female, transgender male or transgender female, like how they see themselves. They see themselves on a spectrum just by, the way they are, just how they see themselves. So that's whenever you get terms like gender expansive, gender nonconforming. That's a term that I use for people who do not fit in our boxes, who they feel a little fluid. You may hear terms like gender queer, gender fluid, non-binary, and so understand the person decides their terms and how they use them and what it means for them. And so no one can tell you what your gender identity is. That is you. That is how you see yourself. So we have our sex assigned at birth, which is from the medical doctor. And then we have our gender identity. When I look into the mirror, who do I see? So after that, it's yelling at me. There we go. Okay, after that, we have our gender expression. This is what you see. This is the outside perspective. This is how you express your gender. This is how you express who you are yourself. This is the big gamut of everything. And so this is also too where society tends to put people in boxes, right? Because, we all know society, if we think like 20 years ago, society would have said, I can't wear this pink sweater, right? Because I'd be seen as, oh, men don't wear pink, but that's more of like a recent thing. Another big recent thing from fashion are skinny jeans. Think about how many people love to wear skinny jeans. Men wearing skinny jeans. That's a fashion. But like 1990, a man wearing skinny jeans, they get talked about this, so those societal norms have an impact on expression and things like that. So if we look at what gender expression is, we're looking at clothes. We're looking at hairstyles. Like, how do you express your gender? We get into preferred names, preferred pronouns. A big thing too for our students are toys, right? Like, what do they like to play with? How do they express their gender through playing with the toys? What's your style? Do you speak more feminine? Are you more masculine? Are you butch? Are you androgynous? Like some of those terms. You may also see like gender non-conforming terms used as a way of talking about gender expression, non-binary, meaning like that's how they express their gender expression. Also, like there's the social aspect of things, like who do they hang out with? Why do they hang out with them? Like, so understand just all of that encompasses your gender expression. So, and that's what we generally tend to see is, okay, how are they expressing their gender? So we have our sex assigned at birth and our gender identity. Now we're looking at the outside. So how are you expressing how you see yourself in the mirror, which is our gender expression. Then the last term has to do with attraction and sexuality. And so this is who you love or who you are attracted to. And so understand now that there is not male, female, you're going to get more attractions and things like that. And so you can't just think of, all right, well, just because you are a transgender male, which means you were born female, but now you identify as male, that doesn't mean as a transgender male, you can still be attracted to men. I know some of you are like, what? I know. Okay, so I know some of you are just like, okay, you just blew my mind. Okay, so let's say that again. So if we're looking at attraction, this is who you are attracted to. So you can be attracted to men, you can be attracted to, cisgender men, which are men assigned at birth, or you can be attracted to cisgender women. You can be attracted to, trans men, trans women. You can be attracted to gender nonconforming individuals. And so with that, you're going to get, like I said, all of these terms. So we get like heterosexual, which are our common terms, right? Heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual. Those are the ones that like most of us understand as our in like male, female, those, our boxes, right? Male, female, that's all you get. And then you get, so people use terms like queer being like open, or you may hear people use the word pansexual, or just meaning, interested in, they look at the person, like not just whether you're male, female, trans female, they look at the person. And so going back to my earlier comment is you can be a trans man and be attracted to men. I had a professor that was a trans woman and was married to a woman. And so your attraction has nothing to do with who you see in the mirror. And I feel like people assume that because you are a trans individual, you are attracted to the opposite sex. You can be attracted to the same sex. Okay? I know. Yes. So those are all four aspects of an individual. Now, as we go into, now we're going to get into how this develops. How does this develop in our children? And so if we look at our gender development, we start at infancy, right? So as a baby, you're born, your sex assigned at birth is given to you. Your parents generally put you in, male clothes, female clothes. And just think about that whole fashion industry. Before 1900s, infant clothes were actually unisex. And the fashion industry learned that, guess what? You can make more money making girls' clothes and boys' clothes, right? And so that's a huge moneymaker, like saying this is for women, this is for men. Think about prices of soap. Whose soap is more expensive? Women's soap. Why? I have no idea, but it's out there, right? And so, can't we all just use soap? So just understand like those things, those societal norms of this is for men, this is for women exist, right? And so then at infancy, parents start to do that. Oh, you're my little boy, oh, you're a sweet little girl, just behaviors, certain things that they do, parents start to, create those gender norms based on what society tells them what is male, what is female. Now, between 18 and 24 months, the toddler begins to define their gender groups. They start to, like, oh, I'm more I see myself this way. And you start to see that. Now, between ages 2 and 4, that is when transgender or gender nonconforming students usually start to say something about their gender identity being different than what their parents think. Actions change and things like that because at 3 and 4, your gender identity starts to mold and you start to see yourself in a more boy or girl like manner. And so um, like I said, so those students start to do things, start to say things. That's sometimes when parents give pushback and all of that happens between ages 2 and 4. And then by age 5 and 6, that's whenever students are pretty rigid. And just think about elementary school. By the time you go to school in elementary school, boys are like, girls have cooties, oh, and you start to see the groups, right? You see boys hang out with boys, girls hang out with girls. And you might see a few kids mix in between, but our average students develop in these steps. So we're going to watch a little video and then we're going to discuss it in the chat. I'll go back to my presentation. So let's talk about it. So in the chat, I'm going to have you answer these questions and I'll talk them out loud. I would love to hear your thoughts. So our first question: when the dad blew up at the child, so at the end of the video of where I stopped it, what other emotions could be there for the dad? Trying to see if I can get to the chat. Okay, fear, exhaustion, fear, embarrassment, shame. Hmm. Yes, 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 I agree with you. I do. And so all those do exist, right? Because that's just like, I just want a normal child, right? Like it's great, but I want this child to be normal, and so those feelings of frustration, fear, embarrassment, yes, I do agree, exhaustion, because extraordinary kids can take a little extra, right? And so all of those could be, you know, what dad is dealing with. Now, what are some thoughts going that were there? What are some thoughts that were going through dad's head at the at that last at that last second, or maybe in that last scene, like at the park? Right. Once it's scared to stop flying. Yes, I can't deal with these other parents, right? Because parents start looking, and you saw in the opening of the video, the neighbors, all of a sudden judging. Yes, 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 fix, fix, fix. Yes. Oh, yes, I don't want something bad to happen to my child. Yes, these are all great, great things. And so the reason I show this is, you know, children do not know they are different, especially at a young age. You know, it's those societal external factors that I like to call that tell them, you know, you're not right. And so if as adults we are not affirming them, you know, we can be creating harm for them. So just think about whenever at the end his dad was pulling him, you know, you saw him or the child, let me say the child, um, you saw the child not want to put on the raincoat, right? Like the child was running away from that because the child couldn't be who they wanted to be, right? They wanted to fly and be free and just, you know, be amazing because all kids fly, right? You know, that's what the child's thinking, like, oh, everybody does what I do. But then, you know, dad knows, well, maybe not. And so I always think a lot of times parents are reacting out of, you know, some of those, the fear of like, I want my child to be safe. And you know, I want them to lead a life where they are going to be accepted. And so sometimes as adults, we can stifle because of our own, you know, for lack of a better word, ignorance or not knowing, you know, what is in that child's best interest. And so I just think that whole video, you feel, you know, dad's frustration, even though we all know dad wants what is best for the child, you know, it's just really hard. So if we look at all of this, and our last question is, what societal factors might contribute to not affirming? So making it difficult for a trans or gender non-conforming child. Like, what are they going to experience that might make it harder for them? Yes, people may be hateful. Family members not accepting them. Yes. Judgment from peers or family. Good. Hmm. Bullying. Yes. Loneliness. Uninformed. Yep. And so I always think as adults, you know, all you parents, counselors, all the adults, we want basic rights such as healthcare. Ain't that the truth? Yes. So all of us adults, we want what is best for the kids. You know, every parent does. It's just those external factors, you know, family judging, you know, like parents react because they're like, you know, am I going to get judged? Or, you know, what other pressures are pressuring you to make your child conform sometimes? And so realize you do have your child's best interest, and it is scary. It's very scary when you have an extraordinary child just in general. Like it doesn't have to be specifically, you know, transgender and gender nonconforming, but you know, a child who has autism, you know, and just things like that. And so understand that those external pressures are on you too, as well as the child. And I also think for our trans and gender nonconforming students, some of those pressures too are, you know, the pressures of social media. Like what is considered what boys should wear, what girls should wear, like what toys should you specifically be playing with, especially in school, like all those pressures of oh well, you're playing with the girls and not with the boys, or, you have to play with this toy, or you should be wearing this, or you should, like all of those pressures that contribute to, them feeling like I can't be who I am. And so the basic term for all of these would be considered microaggressions. And so microaggressions are daily verbal, behavioral, or environmental messages that communicate harmful slights or insults. They can be intentional and unintentional. And so a lot of times for our gender non-conforming students or trans gender students, they get them all the time from many, many different places. And so you might hear, like, student to student, you might hear, you should be playing with the boys. You're a boy, you should be playing with the boys. Or you're a girl, girls don't play with boys. Things like that, like student to student. Or another example could be, I have this awesome, or several awesome boys in my school, and they wear nail polish. In our school, the kids don't think twice about it. They don't consider it anything, but they do wear nail polish, and it's awesome and amazing. And, that could be an easy, girls wear nail polish. But in our building, we talk a lot about accepting everybody, and they come to school with nail polish on. And many people would say too, another microaggression from an adult to maybe another adult is, well, maybe they're just gay. I don't think they are. I really think they like nail polish and they like their nails to be cool. That's what they said, so, like as adults, we try to rationalize the irrational sometimes, and so that can be a microaggression from a parent to another parent. Like, your child's wearing nail polish, they're gay. No, my child just likes nail polish. So a parent to a student, those are generally, those come in just many different ways. Like, I think one from a parent to a student or a child could be, well, I don't mind gay people as long as, we don't have any in our family. What is a child going to think if they identify as something not heterosexual? Oh, I can't say anything, right? Like, my parents aren't going to accept me, or, judging their friends. Oh, she's wearing some boy clothes. She must be, something, something. Kids pick up on those subtle things, which make them not feel safe, which makes them not feel open, which makes them not communicate with adults because they don't feel like who they are will be accepted. And same thing, staff to student. Those could be, kind of the same thing as a parent to student. Staff to student, an example would be, boys line up over here. And that child identifies as a trans male, and the student, and the teacher says, nope, you have to line up in the girls' line. That's a microaggression. That is intentional. Another one is not using the appropriate pronouns or, the appropriate name, or saying, oh, well, you're pretty for a trans girl. What does that mean? So those things come out in just many different ways. And so how can we make sure that we as adults are affirming our students or our children? And so our recommendations for parents, so we're going to start parents, is, okay, let them know they are loved, because that is super important. Because for any transgender, gender nonconforming student, LGBTQ, all of them, they have processed what's going on to them. They've gone through it, they've talked about it, they've embodied it. So when they come to you, they've already been through the process. So them coming out to you for you, you're going to be taken back, but like just letting them know you are loved. It's not a phase. There's no cure. Like, telling them it is okay. Like, that is great. You are an amazing person. You are going to do things. Also, we all know if you give them if you have a cell phone and you can't use it and you're like, hey, show me how to do this. How excited are they? They are super excited to be the expert. This is something that they are the expert in, who they are. So letting them tell you like who they are, what terms they use, like, listen and learn. And sometimes as adults, that's really hard because we kind of want to listen and fix. Right? Like you're like, yes, like like we're like, okay, no, well, you got to do it like this. Well, just don't hang out. Just don't hang out with her tomorrow if she's mean, and they're like, no, that's not what I want to do. So like for us, it's just like taking that step back of going, listen and learn. Let them guide the conversations. They are the experts. You may get other experts in to help guide them, but then like let them know that, like I said, they are loved. They are who they are, and you love it. All right. So the other one is a team approach. I feel that parents always think they are alone. You are not alone. There are a lot of resources out there. PFLAG is a parent organization for LGBTQ plus children. And so it is a huge, huge, huge resource to talk to parents, because a lot of parents have been in your shoes, right? Like if you feel this way, like it's just a huge parent resource and support that will help you, as well as youth groups. Youth groups for kids are amazing because they feel just as isolated as you do, and so just finding those communities will help bring so much empowerment and support for both you and your child. And the other one is mental health supports, because it is a lot. Like in the video, that shame, that guilt from the dad, like that is something that, as adults, we have to work through, because those external factors are intense, right? And so understand, like, how can we keep ourselves healthy, but then also how can we make sure your child is healthy as well. So mental health supports, doctors are all crucial to, like I said, the whole team approach when coming to helping students and your family get through the process. Also, I think it is awesome and great to have them practice how are they going to respond if someone says something like a microaggression, because that is something that is going to exist, unfortunately, right? Like, let's be honest. And so it is important that they know what can they say to keep themselves safe, so that they don't escalate the situation, and have them practice those things so that when it happens, they know how to respond. And that goes to like any of our students who are extraordinary. Like, how can we get them to respond so that they don't escalate the situation, but they also feel safe and they feel empowered because they said something. And then their friends will start saying the same thing when they hear, okay, this is what my friend said, I'm going to start saying the same thing. And social media. Social media can be one of those places where they can easily be taken advantage of, and things like that, like being a part of the LGBTQ family. So just really like staying on top of who are they talking to, what are they on, like what communities are they looking into, just being very mindful of that social media for our middle school and high schoolers. And I can say too, at my school, we have a cultural parent group. I should have put this on here. They do a book study every 2 weeks, and they do culturally ethnic books. So Black History Month, like we're doing Asian American Heritage Month in May. But we're also doing things with families. So they're reading books with, diverse families, and looking at, you can throw things in there about a trans student if you have that in your building. Like, start having those discussions with parents with books, because books are a very friendly way to get things across. to especially like our elementary school students and parents. And for teachers, we have just looking at language. I feel that when I went through school, everything was very boys, girls, boys, girls, boys, girls. You know, how can we be more inclusive? You know, like looking at, can you say students? Can you say first graders? I think a big push should be we're all about careers. You know, if you're doing math, mathematicians, because mathematicians, that's very, you know, they're mathematicians. Okay, you're doing some science and they're gonna like discover, okay, detectives, you know, or investigators. Like, how can you create a career element into what they're doing, because then they're learning about careers. They're like, oh, I could do that one day. You know, like how can we instill that college readiness piece in them early on? And I feel like looking at that career piece of how we address them is a great way to do that. As well as, you know, as we get them in lines and things like that, like try not to do it by gender. You can do it by birthdays. You can do it by alpha order. You can also do it by in the middle school they had plot partners. They had a sheet with like the 12 hours, and so it would go around and put kids names in them, and then the teacher would say, okay, you're going to partner up with your 6 o'clock partner, or you're going to partner up with your 8 o'clock partner. So then all kids are partnering with somebody, and it's not always, you know, boys are going to partner with girls, girls are going to partner with girls. It's allowing them to mix and mingle and not feel like, you know, I have to partner with somebody who is like me or as the same gender as I am. Also, being aware to use the correct pronouns and names, because that is crucial, because we all know the importance of a name and being called the correct pronoun. And with everybody, you know, expression being so open now in America, you know, it's one of those, it's important too to make sure in your identification that people know, you know, he or him, you know, she and her and things like that, so that people are feeling respected and they are heard, and they are affirmed of who they are. Like I said, books are great. So to try to find, there are lots of LGBTQ books out there with diverse characters. I also think as teachers, listening as well, because students always come to us with all kinds of information, right? And so we can really like just listen and learn from the terms they use, because asking them, okay, well, what does that term mean to you? You don't need to be an expert. Let them be the expert. Just question, okay, what does it term mean to you? Oh, okay, 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 that makes sense. You know, and then they're, you know, they feel empowered that you are learning and you are learning from them about their experience. It builds that relationship as well. And then, you know, if you want to consult someone else, if you need to talk to a counselor or things like that, make sure to ask the student, because you do not want to out that student, because maybe that student may not feel comfortable with that other adult and they might feel comfortable with another adult. So like make sure if you want to consult, say, hey, you know, is it okay if I share this information with blah, 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 so that they know and they feel like, okay, yes, you know, and then you're not outing them, because if you out them, we know that relationship shuts down. And if that relationship shuts down, you may be the only person that this child talks to. And, you know, that's going to lead to other things as well. And the last one, sponsor a gay straight alliance. And that is proven facts. If you look it up, that those are a great way for students who are LGBTQ to feel empowered, because it's not just the LGBTQ family, it's also their allies. And so it gets them together to just do just different things. And so understand like those, especially in middle school and high school, make a difference in creating that inclusive culture of everyone, not just certain ones. So if we have any questions, we're at the end of my presentation. Then I'll put my contact information here if you want it, and then I can answer some questions for the last 10 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Williams. That was great information. And I marked a couple of things. I wrote down a couple of things that I really love that you said. Of course, making sure that you know that telling your child that they are loved And I saw someone put in the chat not to say no matter what, just know that, just let them know that they are loved. Just those words, sometimes we take those for granted, but letting your child know that you really care about them and that you love who they are for themselves, and not putting any caveats onto that. I think that's extremely important. And I also love that you talked about how we have to allow our kids, when they're in the safety of their home, to practice how they're going to respond to those microaggressions, because sometimes their response can be come from a place of anger, and probably rightfully so. But if they respond in a way that makes them to be perceived as upset or angry, then one, it pushes that person back and makes that person's offenses come up. And then it also doesn't allow that person to learn from their experience. And so helping our students to process and practice what they're going to say if a certain situation arises outside of the home. And I would even say maybe in the home, because it could come from family members. Not all family members will agree that allowing your child to be fully who they are is what's best for them. So I really like that. Thank you for sharing that information with us. We do have a few questions in the chat, in the question and answer. So if you have any questions, feel free to put those questions in the question and answer. There is a little button down at the bottom. And if you can't find that, feel free to drop them in the chat as well. But the first question, in the school setting, what if there are teachers that disagree with gender, not just being boy and girl, or refuse to honor them?
Well, that's a conversation with your principals, and like making sure that your child does feel safe, because all children do deserve a place where they feel safe and accepted. And so really like trying to have a conversation with teacher, principal, and making sure that your child is in a safe environment.
Thank you. Absolutely. At what age should I allow my child to freely express themselves?
I don't think there's an age, because your expression starts when you're young, right? Like like none of us remember like waking up and like like putting on these clothes. Like it was just like you just woke up and you're like, oh, I'm gonna wear this because I like it. Like as kids, like we do things because we like it. We don't know things are bad until we get older, and those external factors start to say, oh, that's wrong, and then you stop doing it. But as a kid, you're like, oh no, I'm gonna wear my rain boots and this raincoat and these shorts and look a hot mess, but my parents gonna let me look a hot mess because that's what I feel good in. Right.
So really just letting them be themselves at all times and encouraging that at a young age and supporting them in that. All right. How do you combat family that doesn't agree with your child being transgender?
That's a hard one. Um, Probably education, like providing as many resources to them. And like I feel like family conversations tend to happen in more family settings, like when everybody's around. And so like when everybody's around, it gets a little heat, everybody's on heightened alert, right? And so trying to have that conversation in a neutral environment with just you and that person, and talking from a place of love, because everybody cares about kids. Like their care, they love your child, they just sometimes it's that not understanding. So how can you provide as much information to them so that they're like, oh, okay, I see that, because they do care about your child. It's just other factors are getting in their way of truly seeing who your child is.
Thank you. I like that. How do you let go and let your child be, knowing how cruel society can be? I felt like you touched on this a little bit with the helping them to understand the microaggressions and reaction to that.
Yes. Yes.
Parent or an adult who really cares for a child, really just let them go, knowing that the world can be sometimes cruel.
Right. Well, I think if we look at it, the world's cruel to a lot of people. So how do we do it for like our Asian children now? Like how do we do it for our Black kids. Like you equip them with those tools to know, okay, the world is going to be challenging. You have to have grit. We empower ourselves. So I'm going to give you phrases to tell yourself too, like, what are those affirmations you can tell them so that they know this is who I am. And I have artifacts and facts to say, this is who I am. So what you tell me is wrong because I have facts of, I have these grades, I do this, and that's what they tell themselves. But then you also teach them they can think that, but they have to respond calm, cool, and collective. So like you said, that other person's hearing and their friends are hearing and their friends start to pick up and do the same thing.
Okay, thank you. This is the last question that we have in the question and answer, but again, if you have anything that you would like to ask, please feel free to put it down. We do have about 5 minutes left, but for the last question that we have so far, what should schools do to make all students feel comfortable with who they are?
That goes back to my slide. Schools, so a lot of it is, looking at language, how can we be more inclusive with our language? How can we get rid of boys and girls? How can we always think, how can we celebrate everybody? So what are just things that counselors can do? What are things teachers can do? It's all about bringing in books. Like, how can kids read books from different cultures? And, how can we celebrate? Because I feel like we focus on celebrations in the month, right? Like right now it's Women's History Month. Tomorrow's the last day. Guess what? This is the only time we're going to talk about women's history. Why? We don't have to do that. So how can we do more as teachers, as parents, as being a part of the PTA? Can you start a book club like ours is doing and read diverse books and try to bring that to other families and start to have those dialogues as parents, because that's then going to help the school climate, but it's also going to pass on to kids as well. So how can we just work together in that manner?
I would even add to that, for parents, if you see that there's a place for growth for your child's school, don't hesitate to give them some resources that they could utilize to help educate not only the staff on the campus, but potentially the students and potentially other parents within that community as well, because education really is the key. Sometimes, you mentioned earlier, sometimes people's reaction really does come from a lack of knowing. And the more we can give them information on, well, this is what reality is, the more that maybe they're not accepting, but they're understanding of what's going on and of that individual. Before everyone goes, we do have a few more minutes. In the chat, I've placed some resources on our district counseling website. Is a link to some resources for families and students from the LGBTQIA+ community. There are videos, there are books, there are websites that you can go to learn more information. And then also we have the contact information for Mr. Williams here on the screen. There's a comment that just came in. They should make appointments with trans and non-binary students to make sure they feel comfortable in the bathrooms, and the students should be able to walk to and from classes with friends they trust so they won't be harassed. I think having I can't think of the word, I want to say a network of people that support that child is really important. Alliances, allies is really important. So the more allies we as parents, but also as educators can build around the child, the better that's going to be. And then we also have to take into consideration that we may also have educators within our school district that are also maybe transgender or non-binary, and not to assume that they will be someone that will help our children, but to also be kind of cognizant of the people that you're surrounded with and potential allies that you may have.
And if I could add to that, I think it's important to let the child tell the adults, because a kid, a student's transition or their coming out is up to them. And I feel like, that comment is one of those, it would be great if all of the kids came out and said it, but some kids don't feel comfortable. So I would hate to go up to a child and say, hey, so come talk to me. Oh, so I heard that you are gender nonconforming. All of a sudden they're going to freeze up. They're going to be, and then they're like, is this a safe space? Like, we don't want to do that. Like, we want them to come to us and, feel comfortable sharing and have that relationship, because that's what is going to make them feel safe. And then if, they know at school, if they need more, definitely counselors are great resources to make sure that, they are using the bathroom of their gender identity. And then if they don't feel comfortable, what are other places that they can go, and providing those resources for them. So there's lots of resources out there of, how as counselors we can support our students, all students.
Well, I want to thank you again, Mr. Williams, for joining us tonight. I think you provided us with some great information that we can share, not only with our children, but with our family members and with our school community as a whole. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, parents, students, for joining us tonight. Like I said earlier, this will be on our district website. So if you have any questions, feel free to you can always reach out to myself. I am Dr. LaShawna Lewis with the Counseling Services Department. This video will be on our site, so you can go back and watch it if you missed anything, or if you just want to hear the information again. And then also in our chat is that information on our district site for additional resources for students. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Y'all have a great evening.